So, hi everyone, I'm here to present our research work entitled Bridging Philippine Languages with Multilingual NMT. So, this is the outline of our presentation. So, I'll be going to give a brief overview first of our research study, and then that will be followed by a discussion of the approach that we did for us to be able to reach our research objectives. And then I will be going to discuss the results and our evaluation and analysis of it. And then we will end our presentation with the conclusion and discussion of the future direction of our work. So for the research background, over the years, neural machine translation has achieved great performance in high research data settings. So it has been the standard way of doing translation tasks for many translation systems. But recent research has shown that the performance of NMT drops in low resource data settings as NMT models are known to be highly data inefficient. Recently, one of the trends in low resource MT research has been the exploitation of multilingual data through multilingual neural machine translation. This is with the observations that when low resource language pairs are paired with high resource language pairs, translation quality on the low resource language pair is significantly improved. Multilingual NMT also has a key benefit of being able to translate unseen language pairs during training through zero-shot translation. So this is a working example of transfer learning within neural translation models. And on a practical note, the ability of multilingual NMT to support multiple languages in a single model is helpful in the industry applications of machine translations since it helps in being able to maintain fewer models on production. So many companies are really relying on multilingual NMT on their translation systems. So in the Philippines, there are only a handful of works in neural machine translation, and most of them are either focusing on translating between English and Tagalog or Cebuano. This is despite the Philippines having more than 150 languages, eight of which are considered to be the major languages being utilized by most of the people. So, for our research objectives, we would want to leverage existing resources to build a translation system for the major languages of the Philippines and pioneer translation work on some underrepresented languages. As I have mentioned earlier, that most of the existing research work in translation in the Philippines are only catering to English, to Tagalog, or Cebuano. So these resources include leveraging open source parallel data, since I've mentioned as well that data is scarce in the Philippines, especially on parallel data on other languages aside from Tagalog. And we would want to be able to leverage on open source parallel data as well as um, highly reproducible translation systems for us to be able to develop our own. So for our approach, we were able to collect parallel data from Opus NLP. So they have a wide collection of parallel data from various sources. So we were able to collect um, parallel data from English to several Philippine languages listed here. So we are supporting Bicolano, Cebuano, Hiligaynon, Ilocano, Pangasinense, and Tagalog. So these are some of the major languages of the Philippines. So we have, according to McFarland, there are considered there are considered eight major languages, and we were able to acquire data for the six major languages in the Philippines. And these are the number of instances. So we can see here that the data set is um, has high variability in terms of the number of instances, and it's clear that Tagalog is the one that has high number of instances. So for the highly reproducible translation system, we were able to look for the approach of Google on how they are built their multilingual NMT system. So their approach is very intuitive. There is no requirement to alter or change the architecture of the standard NMT models such as encoder, decoder, or transformers. You just have to add a special token to signify the target language. So we can see here that they just have to modify the dataset that they are going to use, and you just have to retain the um, neural network model that you would want to use. So what we did, we followed that approach, or we just modified the dataset to add a special token to signify the target language. So, for example, in our dataset, we prepended special token to N to signify that we would want to translate to English. So for the different evaluation and analysis, we are able to develop different evaluation scenarios. So first is the standard evaluation of the multilingual NMT model, followed by the evaluation of zero resource translation such as zero shot evaluation and pivot based evaluation. And then we did a comparative evaluation wherein we compared the output of multilingual NMT against a directly trained NMT model. So first, for the standard multilingual NMT evaluation, it's just a direct evaluation of the multilingual NMT model. So this is an evaluation on English to Philippine languages and vice versa. So for this one, this is the results that we were able to get. Um, we can see a relatively high blue score for the English to Bicolano language pair. And then, as expected, English to Pangasinense has the lowest number of blue score since on the training data set, Pangasinense is the language pair that has the least number of instances as well. So next is on the evaluation of the zero shot translation. So for the zero shot evaluation, um, this is our first approach in translating or bridging Philippine languages without relying on any parallel data. So for this one, we were able to generate these results wherein the claim of McFarland all in analyzing Philippine language family has been supported well. So McFarland has mentioned that um, there are two primary language subgroup in the Philippines. So first is the Northern Philippine subgroup, which consists of um, Ilocano, Pangasinense, and other Northern Philippine languages. And the next subgroup is the Central Philippine languages, which includes Tagalog, Bicolano, Cebuano, and Hiligaynon, and other Visayan languages. So McFarland highlighted that these three key points. Hiligaynon may be as closely related to Bicolano and Tagalog as it is with Cebuano, and taken together, the Central Philippine languages are more closely related to each other than any of them is to any of the Northern languages. And lastly, McFarland mentioned that the Northern languages are less closely related to each other than are the Central languages. So on the zero shot evaluation, we were able to support some of these claims, as we can see that Bicolano and Hiligaynon has a yields better comparable or even better results than Hiligaynon is to Cebuano, despite Cebuano and Hiligaynon are being considered to be both Visayan languages. And we can also see here that the central Philippine languages, Bicolano, Cebuano, Hiligaynon, and Tagalog, with the exception of Tagalog, often yields better results when analyzing them together than the northern languages such as Ilocano and Pangasinense. which often yields the lowest blue score. So for the next evaluation, we did a pivot-based evaluation wherein we used a pivot language in being able to bridge translation from unseen language pair. So for our choice of pivot language, we use English since this is the data that um, we have many samples from the training since all of our data are English centric. So you can see here that it's compared to directly relying on the transfer learning approach in zero shot translation. The pivot based translation yields far better results into being able to produce translation on unseen language pairs. So this is still very consistent with our first analysis with the um, claims of McFarland on the characteristics of the several Philippine languages. And then lastly, we did a comparative evaluation of um, two different approaches, standard NMT that is trained on Tagalog to Cebuano and Cebuano to Tagalog parallel data against our ability, the ability of our multilingual NMT to produce translation on unseen language pairs through zero shot and pivot based translation. So we can see that the results, um, the pivot base, are far superior on both approaches on the zero shot and a directly trained NMT model in being able to produce translation results on a low resource environment. For context, the direct NMT model is trained on around 11,000 Tagalog and Cebuano parallel data. So for the conclusion, um, using existing resources, we were able to develop a single translation system supporting several Philippine languages. So we only relied on open source resources that we were able to gather and highly reproducible research for us to be able to develop our own model. And then for the next one, a couple of translation methods were presented to show the different ways we can implement translation for zero research languages, and the pivot based translation emerged far more superior against a zero shot translation. And then lastly, although there are instances where our results support the claims of McFarland regarding the Philippine language family, further evaluation can still be done, and we see this as a future direction of the study. So thank you for listening.